Joining me as he does every week, every Sunday at this time, Harold Hillman, our executive leadership coach, business commentator and author. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Mel.
So how have you gone so far? I mean, you've obviously had a couple of days of freedom. Are you working your way into it? You feeling good?
I'm loving it. I met up with 4 friends last night over at Sky City, our favorite restaurant, Masu, at Sky City. And we sat there for 2.5 hours just absorbing the energy from people being in a room together. And it was just so much fun. It really reinforced that notion that as mammals, we truly do enjoy the warmth in being with other people. And it was just a very fun evening, Mel.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. I'm so pleased, and it's just so great to see everybody out enjoying themselves as well.
It is.
So what we're going to be talking about today is diversity and inclusion, and a little bit about that, because, I mean, diversity... inclusion and diversity for many companies. Well, diversity had a bit of a negative connotation, didn't it, associated with it, namely, quotas like you're only there because you're a woman and the likes, and targets to bring more women and racial and ethnic minorities and members of the LGBTQ community into the business. Do you think that negative sentiment has shifted to something a little bit more positive now?
No, I'm old enough to say that I feel that in a very tangible way it has shifted in a positive sense. I considered myself to be in the freshman class of affirmative action back in the U.S. in the late 60s and early 70s as a poor black kid growing up in the housing projects of Washington, D.C., and being offered a scholarship by a white university. And when I joined at that university, when my very first week there, I realized that I was only one of 5 black students there. And it was an opportunity. I'm always appreciative of it. But it was called affirmative action, and that whole notion that if in the U.S., if you were projecting ahead 30 years, let's say to the turn of the current century, then we would have to start with providing opportunities for racial and ethnic and religious minorities who have been excluded from opportunities. It felt more like numbers. It felt more like targets and quotas. Those were literally tokens. That was literally the word that was used then. There wasn't a whole lot of empirical evidence that validated the positive impact that diversity and eventually inclusion would have. That was back in the 60s. Now we're in 2021, and there is significant empirical evidence now that validates the significance of diversity and inclusion in terms of direct, tangible impact on innovation, creativity, productivity. And Fortune magazine in 2021, this year, cited that the best companies to work for, the 100 best companies to work for, this is a U.S.-based study, rate 75% higher for inclusion. It has become real, and you don't now have to convince most CEOs and senior executives and leaders that it is vital to the performance of the business that we invest in this notion of diversity and inclusion.
So diversity once sort of really stood alone, didn't it? Now the word inclusion goes side by side with it. What led to that, to diversity and inclusion being paired together as one?
I've done a lot of reflecting on this, Mel, in terms of my own experiences there. And if we could do it all over again, I would put the I, inclusion, before the D, diversity. In fact, a number of organizations now refer to their diversity initiatives as I and D, inclusion and diversity versus diversity and inclusion. Here's the analogy that I use. I talk about putting healthy plants, an array, a different assortment of healthy plants in unhealthy soil. And that was, if we could do it all over again, think of the plants as diversity, think of the soil as inclusion. You want to get the soil right. So if we could do it all over again, Mel, we would have started with inclusion and the idea that if you get the culture right, the culture in the organization, it will enable diverse people to thrive when they join you.
So what can a business do to really build an inclusive culture where diversity can really thrive?
It is now really clear that this notion of inclusion, and that is, not only have I joined this organization, but I feel included, has a direct impact on what we call engagement, employee engagement. How engaged are you with your work, as opposed to what 2 decades ago was called employee satisfaction, and our objective was to ensure that everyone was satisfied in the organization. This idea of engagement is deeper. It's more visceral, and there's actually a B, Mel, in terms of belonging. So diversity, inclusion, and belonging. Belonging meaning that if we really want people to give their best, can we build a culture where if you think about the analogy of diversity being, I'm inviting you to the party, inclusion being, I'm inviting you to dance at the party, and belonging being, I'm dancing my butt off in whatever way I want to. That is it's a visceral, it's a deeper sense of connection, and that's what organizations are focused on now. To give people, it's one thing to hire a diverse population, but then if your culture reinforces that a good team is a quiet team. So we don't need a whole lot of conversation. We don't need different perspectives. You can have a colorful tapestry of people sitting around a table, but if the culture requires them all to be silent, then there is absolutely no benefit to the whole idea. And so most organizations now truly appreciate that you work on the culture. You turn the volume up on this notion that everybody is expected to contribute, and it just brings a significant impact on business results in 2021.
So we are fast running out of time, coming out to the news, Harold, but I did want to ask you, how did your experience of growing up gay and black in America impact on your resilience and ability to navigate your career?
Yeah, Mel, I've lived an intriguing life as a black man and a gay man. When I grew up, being gay was considered a psychiatric disorder until 1973. Here in New Zealand, it was illegal to be a gay man, specifically a gay man, until 1986. And we've come a long way. And I am optimistic about the path that we are on, and especially here in New Zealand. If we project ahead 30 years, we're going to be demographically, we're going to be a significantly different nation, and we have to get ourselves prepared.
Absolutely. Hey, Harold, an absolute pleasure to chat with you. Hopefully next week we might be able to see you in person, I think. We might be able to make that work. Have an absolutely wonderful rest of your Sunday and enjoy your socialising as well. Harold Hillman, if you want more from Harold, sigmoidcurve.com is his website.